Hello, everyone. Our topic for today is about the difference between variable and absorption costing. So, I have here a sample problem wherein we are asked to compute the net income using variable and absorption costing. So, first, let us try to list down the different assumptions on this problem. So let us put it in Excel and code it in Excel so that we can easily compute it. Okay, so firstly is the unit selling price. It says here 10 GBP. Unit variable cost, it says here 6. And then fixed cost per period, it says here 300,000. So I'm trying to encode this so that we can easily link the formulas to the different numbers. Okay. Now, it says here that the company produces only one product. Budgeted activity is expected to average 150,000 units per period, and production and sales for each period as follows. So, let's create a table that shows the units sold and produced from period 1 to period 6. So period 1, period 2. So let us try to copy it more easily so that we don't need to type it all over. I'm quite particular with the different headings and things like that. So please bear with me if I'm trying to bold or fix the formatting. And then we put in here units sold in thousand and units produced in also in thousand. So for period 1, it's 150, 120, 180, 150, 140, and 160. So that's period 1 to period 6. And then units produced is 150, 150, 150, 150, 170, and 140. Now, it says here that there were no opening inventories at the start of period 1, and the actual manufacturing overhead at actual manufacturing fixed overhead incurred was 300,000 per period. So this is um manufacturing overhead. So we put in here manufacturing fixed overhead, which is 300,000. In thousand ko na lang siya, ha? And then the non-manufacturing overhead is 100,000 per period. Okay? So we have listed down our given in here. So let's try to do let's try to compute for the net income for the different periods. So I will just copy here variable cost so that we don't need to retype. So variable cost, and then let's do the same for the absorption cost. Okay? So we will be doing two profit statements. So I will just copy this. Don't worry, I won't cheat on the answer. So opening stock, it says that the opening stock, there's no opening inventories as at the start of period 1. So, and then production cost. So how do we compute for the production cost? So for variable costing, the production cost is equivalent to the unit variable cost times the quantity produced. So it is like 150 times the unit variable cost. Now, as we will be copying the information from column N to column S, so let's put in here, let's fix this. So we can put in here, and let's fix it that way. So just copy it. So it means that each of the cell is being multiplied to the fixed amount or fixed number, which is the 6 GBP. Okay? I'll just put in here total. This is not necessary for now. Okay. Closing stock. So what is the value of the closing stock? So it should be units produced less units sold times, what are we going to multiply it with? We will multiply it with the unit variable cost. So since we will be fixing it to be multiplied here, so similarly, let's put some, okay, let's fix it. All right. So, but hold on, before we compute for the closing stock for the next period, remember that we have to consider, let us not forget that we have to consider the prior period. Kasi this is a continuous production. So from period 1, period 2, whatever is left unsold in period 1 will be carried forward to period 2. So actually, what we will do is in here in the second period is to get the sum of the units produced, and then let's put some, so we are going to fix this so that we can easily copy the formula, okay? Minus sum of this, okay? And remember, we are going to fix the first item, okay? Now, then we multiply it also with this amount, which is the unit variable cost. So again, we have to fix it again. So you can press F4, but in here I'm just typing it manually and highlighting it as well so that you will see, okay? So it should be sum of N to O minus sum of N9, but we shouldn't forget to put in parentheses, okay? Parentheses because, why? Because of the MDAS formula, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. So, since this one is near this sum, so if we will follow that mathematical principle, ang gagawin niya is i-multiply niya muna to dito and then get the difference between these and the product of this. So, pero ang gusto kasi natin is to get first the difference between the units produced and units sold and then multiply it by the variable cost. Okay? So that's what we're going to do. And because closing stock is a deduction to the cost of sales, so let's just put a negative amount there. Okay? Para pag sinum up natin siya, ganyan, makukuha niya yung ibabawas niya. Okay? And then, the opening stock should be coming from the prior period. So, parang naki-carry forward lang siya, di ba? And then, this one, pag kinopy mo yung formula dito, when you copy the formula here, you will see that ayan no, na-highlight siya. So, when I fix the formula, on the leftmost letter N, so pag kinopy ko yung formula to the right, if i-fix niya yung nandun sa pinaka-first cell until I copy it to the right. Okay? So, this way, mas madali nang i-copy yung formula kaysa yung gagawa ako ng formula for every cell. Okay? So, I copy it hanggang dulo. So, you will see that from period 1, 2, 3, 4, ayan, meron tayong closing stock because we have more products produced than sold for that period. And then, kung ano yung closing stock mo, like for period 2, it will be carried forward as the opening stock for period for 3, and so on and so forth. Okay? So this is how we compute the cost of sales. Now, fixed cost is it says here that the fixed cost is 300,000. So, if i-fix ko ulit siya, yan, you can, again, I mentioned, you can use F4 here, but since I'm doing this recording, whenever I press F4, it highlights it, which is good one way or another. Ayan. So, let me remove the highlight. And then, if I copy it, naka-fix siya. Okay, so it's just fixed on that amount. And it says that the fixed cost is per period. Okay? So now, oops, no. I have to add this all together. Closing stock is here. Opening stock is here because I wanted to see the total amount. Okay, so how much is our total cost per period? So it should be cost of sales plus fixed cost. Okay? So, i-add lang natin siya isa-isa. Is this correct? Okay. Now, sales is the number of units sold times the unit selling price. So you can see here, units sold times unit selling price. So that will give us the total amount of sales. So again, since the unit selling price is fixed from one period to another, so let's make sure that it is, the formula is fixed on that cell. Okay, so in order for us to do it, so kung makikita nyo dito, ayan, N9 times N13. So N9, which is the unit sold, times nakafix ka doon sa N13. Okay? Now, you just drag it to copy the formula. So you need not to retype the formula every time that you compute. Then, total cost is, i-copy lang natin, is equal to that. Okay? Yung nandun sa row dito, row 24. So, how much is our gross profit? So, gross profit is sales minus total cost. So, yan. And then, so sales minus total cost is gross profit. Now, the problem also says that there is a there's a non-manufacturing overhead which amounts to 100,000 per period. So, ulit, yan, if fix natin siya doon, yan, non-manufacturing overhead, kasi nga sabi niya, it is fixed at 100,000 per period. Okay? And then, i-copy lang natin siya. Now, so, having all these numbers on this table, we can now compute for the net profit, which is gross profit minus the non-manufacturing overhead. So, i-copy mo lang yung formula mo from column N to column S, and then we will see, oops, mali. Oh, may mali dito. Okay, you saw in here that fixed cost is cost of sales is yada. Okay. Fixed cost of sales. No. Dapat pala sum to. Sabi ko, bakit may mali? So, your total net profit, kasi it can't be zero. So, you get the sum of this. Ayan. I was checking my formula earlier kasi nga sabi ko, parang something is wrong. Okay? So, again, opening stock is The problem says that there's no opening stock, and then as you go along from one period to another, the opening stock for the next period is the closing stock from the prior period. So these two rows are one way or another a bit related. Now, production costs for the variable costing, again, in variable costing, production cost is equivalent to the units produced times the unit variable cost. Okay? And then, we try to get the value of the closing stock, which is the difference between produced minus sold times the unit variable cost. So we don't consider fixed manufacturing overhead. That is for the variable costing. So kaya makikita mo dito yung closing stock is just multiplied to the unit variable cost. Okay? Now, getting the cost of sales is, di ba, we learned it from basic accounting. Cost of sales is opening inventory, add purchases, or add production costs, less closing inventory to get the cost of sales. Okay, so that's how we computed for the cost of sales. Now, we have here a fixed manufacturing overhead per period, so that's 300,000. So you add it to the cost of sales to get the total cost for each of the period. And then to get the gross profit, so sales quantity for the period times the unit selling price will give you the sales for each of the period. Total cost is just equal to what we have computed above, okay? And then, so that's our gross profit from sales. You deduct non-manufacturing overhead, which is fixed at 100,000 per month. Thus, the net profit per month is gross profit less non-manufacturing overhead. So that will give you 280, yada yada. And if you add it all together from period 1 to period 6, your total sales is 9 million because these are in thousand. Your total cost is 7.2 million, giving you a gross profit of 1.8 million. Now, the non-manufacturing overhead is fixed at 100 per month. This is actually, it's 100 per month, so that's 600,000 for the last 6 periods. So gross profit of 1.8 minus 600,000 will give you a net profit of 1.2 billion. Okay, let us try to do the same for the absorption costing. So now we will see what is the difference between absorption costing and variable costing. Okay, now in the absorption costing, we should remember that the value of the inventory cost is actually it's not, it doesn't only consider the unit variable cost, but it also considers the total, it also considers the fixed manufacturing overhead. So for variable costing, it just considers the variable manufacturing cost. In absorption costing, this one also considers the fixed manufacturing overhead that is incurred in the period. So it considers this 300,000, ito, or ito, which is nilagay lang natin in thousand. Okay? Now, let's try to redo the same problem, but what we will do is we will use absorption costing principle. So the same, there's no opening stock. Now, the production cost will now be different. So the production cost will be units produced times the unit variable cost. Let's try to fix it. So units produced times unit variable cost. So what else do we need to add? Plus the fixed manufacturing overhead, which is 300,000, and let us also try to fix it because we will be the fixed manufacturing overhead is the same from period 1 to period 6. Okay? So now it will result to production cost of 1.2 million. So you will see there's already a difference in terms of the production cost. Okay? So we can copy the formula. So drinag ko lang yung cell. So para ganyan, no? Hilahin mo lang. Okay. So let me try to kasi ako, ma-shortcut ako no? Ayoko nang pa-copy. I don't want to copy all the same things. And then, the formula for the opening stock is actually similar to this. Opening stock is equal to the closing stock from the prior period. Now, for us to compute the closing stock, we need to understand the inventory cost. I mentioned that inventory cost it considers not only the unit variable cost but also the fixed manufacturing overhead. Since 6 GBP is only the unit variable cost, so we have to compute the fixed cost the unit fixed cost per period based on the products or on the actual production units. So, in order for us to compute the total inventory cost, it will be the production cost kasi the production cost is comprised of the variable cost component and the fixed cost, the total fixed cost for the period divided by the units produced. Okay? So, kung titignan natin, in period 1, the unit inventory cost is 8 GBP. 6 GBP of which pertains to unit variable cost, and the difference between the two is the unit fixed cost. I-copy natin yung formula. So, period 2, ganun pa rin. Period 3, ganun pa rin. But it will change in period 5 and 6 kasi yung units produced period 5 and 6, yung units produced is higher than the prior period, which is around 150. So, nakita mo, bumaba yung inventory cost. Now, in period 6, wherein the units produced is lower than the period 1 to period 4, you will see that the unit inventory cost is actually higher than period 1 to period 5 kasi nga mas mababa yung units produced. Fix yung cost natin, fix yung manufacturing overhead. So the lower the divisor, the higher the inventory cost. Okay? Now, for us to compute the closing stock, the value of the closing stock is actually the difference between produced minus sold times the unit inventory cost. Oops. Ulit. Produced minus sold. Lagyan natin ng parentheses. Again, let's remember MDAS, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. So that's why it's necessary for us to ensure that we put the proper parentheses to make sure that we will the parentheses will ensure that the computations that you want to happen first will really be executed first. Kasi kung wala yung parentheses, i-assume niya na uunahin niyo muna yung multiplication, and then division, and then addition, then subtraction. Okay? So, hindi iisipin ni Excel yung iniisip mo. So, you have to tell Excel ano yung uunahin niya by putting in the proper parentheses, because if there's no parentheses, it will just assume the MDAS concept in mathematics. So, produce minus sold times the unit inventory cost. Okay? Copy lang natin siya. Tapos again, since the closing stock is a deduction to cost of sales, kasi nga ending inventory siya, lagyan lang natin siya ng negative amount. Okay? Tapos, dito kasi, sa period 2, wag mo na pala nating i-copy, it should be sum of the units produced, and then, again, lagyan na, i-fix natin yung formula dito para pwede nating i-copy yung formula to the left or to the right, okay? Minus sum of this. And then again, lagyan natin to ng ganyan. I-fix natin para pag kinapi natin pakaliwa o pakanan, naka-refer pa rin siya dun sa pinakaunang cell. And then again. Yan. Lagyan natin ng parenthesis. And then, we are going to multiply it by the unit inventory cost for that period. Okay? Tapos, since the closing stock, again, is a deduction to total cost of sales, so lagyan natin na negative sa harapan. Okay? So, nakita nyo na negative 240 siya. Tanggalin mo na natin yung highlight. Yan. Tama ba ang mga formula natin? Let's see if this is correct. Okay, is this the same? Bakit ito iba? Parang mali. Dapat ganyan yan. Okay, i-copy lang natin yung cost of sales. Tinitingnan ko yung sagot ko earlier. Okay. So, cost of sales is opening stock plus production cost less closing stock. And then, since wala ka ng fixed cost, I mean, nakatuck in na dito sa taas yung yung fixed manufacturing overhead. So, your total cost is yan. Now, same banana, your sales and cost of sales and gross profit formula should be the same. Sales is units sold times unit selling price, and then again we will fix it. Okay. Ayan. And then the non-manufacturing overhead, the similarity between variable cost and absorption cost is that the fixed manufacturing overhead is treated the same way. So regardless kung variable cost or absorption costing, pareho lang yung treatment sa kanya, okay? So at least meron silang common denominator. Okay, now getting the net profit. Okay? So you will see that the net profit for absorption costing is higher than what we have derived from variable costing. Okay? So this is a simple way of showing how different variable and absorption costing. So there is a big impact if there is a difference in terms of the units produced versus the units sold, because it affects the value of the inventoriable cost, or which is the closing stock. Okay? This is a very simple problem, and we will be seeing other problems, more complicated problems later on, especially when we already have different products at the same time. But just to simplify the difference between the two, so you will see that on this example, the net profit of absorption cost costing is a bit higher than variable cost, and you will see that the total units sold for the period is 900 and the units produced is 910. So, ibig sabihin, merong natirang inventory. Now, kung walang natirang inventory, actually, what will happen is more likely pareho lang yan ng 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 ano tawag dito, ng profit. So, ayan, oh. So, ang ginawa ko, nakita nyo? So, ginawa ko, meron akong total units sold for the period is 900, period 1 to period 6, and then total units produced for the period is 910. Ngayon, nakikita nyo na mas mataas ng bahagya ang profit ni absorption cost versus variable cost. Now, if I will try to tweak one of the numbers here so that the units sold will be equal to the units produced, tignan nyo ang mangyayari, ha? Yan, takihan natin. So, 1,200 or 1.2 million and then 1,221 sa absorption costing. Tandaan nyo yan. Now, let me make sure, what I will try to do is the units produced will be equal to units sold. So, gawin ko tong 170. So, anong nangyari? Naging equal na yung profit ni variable cost and absorption cost. So, ang assumption natin is, so what we're able to see here is if the units sold is equal to the units produced, then the net profit for that entirety of the period between variable costing and absorption costing will be the same. But if the quantity produced is greater than the quantity sold, then it means that absorption costing will result to higher profitability for that period. Okay? So, okay tayo doon? So, I hope you learned something today. So, I will show other Excel computations for the difference between variable and absorption costing. Thank you for listening.